What's good, everybody? My name is Mateo Toro. I'm a cinematographer. In this video, I'm going to break down how we shot 3 different scenes for this music video inside of a small room, inside of a basement with no budget at all. In this breakdown, I really want to emphasize the power of lighting and how important it really is for your music videos. Typically, as music video directors, you usually find yourself with small budgets, small crew, small spaces. So lighting is really the most important thing you should focus on to really transform these spaces so you can create a stylistic look and just elevate the entire look of your music videos. Let me play you some quick clips of the music video and we'll get into the breakdown right away.
Vibing with the grace, I'm slipping, sliding out the way. Every time you lied, I seen it in your face. Fuck unity, all of that shit will just ruin me. Double down like you like that, maybe it's pop, maybe this shit is all baby like.
Real quickly, I'll go over the camera gear that we use to film these scenes for this music video. For my camera, I went with the Sony fx3. I just can't overstate how powerful this small little camera really is. The dynamic range is out of this world. You can really push it to its limits and retain so much information in the highlights and in the shadows. And you have that amazing ability to go to 12,800 if you're using smaller, less powerful lights, so you could just add more ambient light to your scenes. For the lenses, I decided to go with my Sony anamorphic 2-lens kit that I own, which is the Sony 100mm 1.6x anamorphic lens and the Sony 35mm 1.6x anamorphic lens. They're both full frame. I really wanted to test anamorphics in a small space, given the fact that that is one of the benefits of shooting anamorphics. You have so much more coverage in the wide area of the frame. So this would allow a small space to just feel bigger than life and just to really play with some interesting compositions. So those are the 2 lenses that I use for all 3 scenes. This is the first scene we decided to film for the music video. As a cinematographer, there's 4 key things that I'm thinking of immediately when I get to a room and I'm looking for my shot. I'm thinking of lighting, I'm thinking of composition, most importantly, I'm thinking of movement, and I'm thinking of color contrast. And that's those 4 elements that really brought this simple shot to life. Here we have Brielle just sitting on a couch, and that's as plain as a shot as you can possibly get. Now, what made it more interesting for me is that I decided to use a 100mm anamorphic lens. So it's a telephoto focal length. We're in a small room, so with that telephoto compression, so he's the main focal point of this scene right here, because again, he's just sitting on a couch. How can we make this more interesting? For movement, I knew I wanted to get him placing the AirPods into his ear, so I just slowly panned up for that movement. And then for the composition, I really raised the tripod all the way up almost to the ceiling of this small basement room and just pointed it down towards diagonally so we could get this composition right here. So for lighting, we only had 2 lights to our disposal, and we wanted something very simple that just really worked out and made this one scene pop as much as it did. So off to the side of the camera, which you can't see, there is a window with window shears. That is acting as diffusion for Brielle, because outside of this we have a 600D with barn doors with CTO gel. We have the 600D from Aperture, we have the F10 Fresnel and barn doors, so we could really draw the light straight onto where we want it to be, and we could get sharp shadows, as you can see right here. I really wanted sharp shadows throughout this scene. With the CTO, I could get that color that I really wanted, which was that street, gritty, alleyway, orange look that you would find in streets of, like, New York or something like that. Because I knew for the color contrast, I was gonna go orange and green. So for the green right here, we have a Nanlite power tube blasting on a green tint, and we used the Nanlite's actual case and just zipped it up a little bit so it could just only point to Brielle's shadow side right here. So this allows us to really control the light as much as we can using the actual case of the Nanlite to spill onto Brielle so we can get that color contrast with green and orange. And then right here we have the 600D just blasting light super strong into Brielle and diffuse with the actual window shears that we had available to us. So this scene is very simple. It's all about composition. It's all about thinking how you can separate a scene with color so you could really make something just more dynamic, and it's pretty simple. All right, so we're still in this basement room. Again, we're playing with a very limited amount of space. This is a very small room. It's hard to really tell because of the lens choices and the composition I decided to go with. So here we have the exact same lighting setup. We have the 600D straight outside with the barn doors, and it's just blasting light through this window, putting the intensity up as much as possible so I could really fill the room with ambient light, so I could go for a silhouette. So now I place Brielle just slightly in front of the window so he could be a silhouette. So I'm backlighting him. I'm turning the exposure down as much as possible with the aperture up so I could get a silhouette. And then same thing, we have the nan light just off to the side right here, blasting green. And obviously we didn't have the best, we didn't have egg crates or diffusion for the nan light, so it is spilling just a little bit up here, which is totally fine. You know, it is what it is. It's a music video, but all we really wanted was to get that color separation on the man cave and on this wall right here, because the main emphasis is Brielle right here in the middle. And again, I really went really hard with the silhouette look, so that obviously pushed a lot of shadows on this side. And so it was really dark, so I'm glad I had the FX3 because I placed the ISO at 12,800 and I still was able to retain a lot of information in the highlights. You can still see the window, you can still see some of the shears, which is totally nice. And then we just used a little bit of composition to get a couple different layers for this scene. So we have, you know, the ceiling above Brielle on the ceiling, then we have Brielle and the ceiling right here. You know, this is really nice because it allows us to just use the same setup that we're using and just flipping the camera to one side. So instead of filming away from the window and acting as that motivated light, we just flip the camera, place Brielle in front of the window, and now we have a silhouette. So now we have two different performance takes in the exact same room with the exact same setup. So we're not really losing a lot of time with moving things, moving lights around or moving the camera around. It's just simply about just moving the tripod, and now we have a whole different scene, which is awesome. All right, this is the final scene that we shot inside the small room of this basement, and we just decided to keep the same position as we did for that last scene, silhouette scene. We're still using the window as our motivated light, and we just have the 600D once again with the barn doors and CTO gel just blasting light through the window, and we up the intensity of the light so we could fill the room with ambient light, so we could get a little bit more light back onto Brielle's face. If not, he would be a silhouette again, but we didn't want a silhouette look this time around. Now, for us to get really close as we are right here with an anamorphic lens, that is one of the drawbacks of using most anamorphic lenses, that they don't really have close focus. So we decided to use a diopter on the anamorphic 35mm lens, which is pretty wide already, but now we can get wide and we get close, which is an interesting look that you don't typically see people use too often. But in music videos, it just makes sense. You're able to really capture intensity, you're able to capture movement, especially if you did what we did, which is we took the tripod head off the tripod legs and we just acted as if it was a DIY snorri cam, where, you know, you see where people strap cameras onto artists and they're really expensive big rigs. Well, here we just DIY'd it independent style, and we just followed Brielle's movement to capture that intensity of his performance. So a combination of things are still working into our favor here. We're using movement to really up the intensity of the performance, but then we slowed the shutter speed all the way down to get that trippy look that you see right here, which is very blurry. We slowed the shutter speed down to 1/5 of a shutter speed, and we had the frame rate at still 24 frames a second. So this really just worked out. It's different, it's unique. That's what music videos are really cool about, because you're able to do whatever you want. You don't really have to think too much about it looking realistic or super motivated. And that's the breakdown of this music video scene. Just very simple, one light. There you have it, everyone. Quick breakdown of how we shot 3 different music video scenes in this one small tight basement room. It's really all about getting creative and really thinking about lighting and how we can change a room so you can make it more dynamic and just more stylized. And always think about your composition, right? That will allow you to make a boring sofa scene a little bit different and just stand out depending on the lenses they use, how you frame it with that specific lens and camera setup. And then also thinking about the movement. What scenes call for what type of movement? For this last scene, as I showed you, we decided to follow the intensity of Brielle's performance. So we went with a snorri cam look, we slowed the shutter speed, and now we have a trippy, eccentric look that is just very different from the other 2 scenes. And then again, just keep it simple. You have one source of light, or you have only 2 lights at your disposal. Think about how much you can do with just those 2 lights before you start shooting. So we use the one light outside the entire time, which is the Aperture 600D. We just flipped the camera a couple different times depending on what we were shooting. For example, like the second one, which is that silhouette. So have fun. That's what music videos are about. Get stylized, get creative. Don't think too much like if this was a narrative or a movie where you have to be really super specific on motivated lighting and trying to figure out where to place light bulbs. You can do all that, but you can still have a lot more fun with music videos. So I hope you enjoyed this cinematography breakdown. I hope you learned a little bit of the sauce. Very simple. Leave your comments below on what you learned, or if there's any suggestions you would have made differently. And if you're an indie music video artist, keep it going. So I'll catch everyone in the next video. Peace.